Welcome everybody to today's event. My name is Todd Schleckaway. I have the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of NATE, the Communications Infrastructure Contractors Association. And we are so excited to be here live today with all of you and to those watching online to listen to FCC Chairman Brendan Carr unveil his Build America agenda. Who's excited? NATE represents over 1,000 member companies, mostly small business contractor firms like Vicor, nationwide, who build, deploy, and maintain the nation's communications infrastructure. And it's fitting that this event today is at Vicor, one of NATE's founding members 30 years ago. We are celebrating our 30th anniversary as a national trade association, and there's no better place to celebrate NATE's 30th anniversary and today's policy rollout by Chairman Carr than Vicor's state-of-the-art training center, so we're really excited. Chairman Carr has invested a lot, and I mean a lot of sweat equity in meeting with our NATE member contractor firms and, more importantly, their tower technician workforce since he joined the FCC as a commissioner. And that's everything from getting certified as a climber and rescuer in our industry to scaling the top heights of a 2,000-foot broadcast tower. So we sure appreciate the chairman's initiative and proactive rollout in terms of meeting with our member companies and the tower technician workforce. And at this time, it's my privilege to announce Craig Snyder, the founder of Vicor, to the stage. Let's give Craig a round of applause.
Am I supposed to move this mic? It's a little tall for me. I'm short, sorry. Hey, welcome everyone. It's great to have you here at the Vicor headquarters in our training center today. We couldn't be more proud that we can host this event for Chairman Carr as he rolls out his Build America agenda. I'm Craig Snyder, as was said, the founder of Vicor. I met Brendan Carr about 7 or 8 years ago when he came here to the dedication of this building. He ended up climbing some towers that day, and he'll probably talk about that. But he became I used to call him the climbing commissioner. Now he's the chairman. Why is he the chairman? Because he is one of the smartest guys I know. He's most committed to our industry. He loves the tower workforce and all the workforce that builds infrastructure in this country. And he has always been a champion, the best champion for companies like mine and these guys standing behind me today. And so I couldn't be more proud to introduce the Honorable Brendan Carr, Chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. Chairman Carr.
Wow, thanks so much, Craig. Thanks so much, Todd, for that great introduction. It is great to be back here in Sioux Falls, and I'm especially grateful to be here once again at Vicor, at their Tower Climber Training Center. You know, I'm always excited to get back out here to South Dakota and visit with so many people that have become good friends over the past few years. And it's wonderful to see how much this particular facility has continued to grow and expand. We've got new practice towers, we've got rigging and hoisting setups, we've got training structures to climb. As Craig indicated, I first visited this very training center over 7 years ago. That's also the first time in this job that I violated what's known as the Dukakis rule governing public officials putting on ill-fitting helmets, donned a hard hat and a harness, and I went out back with Brandon, who's here today, and I climbed my very first practice tower right out in the back parking lot here. When I got up to the top of that tower, admittedly, I was a little shaky on that very first climb that I'd ever done. Didn't help when Leland, another climber who was up there with us, started trying to shake the tower when we were up there. But from that day forward, I've considered Brandon to be a very good friend, and Leland a so-so friend after that incident. Just kidding, we still stay in touch. You know, I've had the good fortune since then of joining many other of these tower dogs on climbs all across the country, everywhere from Utqiagvik, Alaska, down to the Gulf Coast of Florida. Dozens of different towers at this point, and those climbs and those times with America's tower crews have been just a tremendous amount of fun. But I've also learned something. I've learned a lot about what it takes to build internet infrastructure in this country. My most memorable climb was probably the 2,000-foot tower that Brandon and I did about 10 miles from here in Rowena, South Dakota. If you've ever been through Rowena, you probably know the tower. It's the 2,000-foot tall one, the big one. You can actually see it from here, surrounded by thousands of acres of farmland. That afternoon, I met Brandon at the base of the footer. We put on our harness and hard hat again and headed up to the top just in time to see a pretty epic sunset up there. I got to take pictures while Brandon was stuck troubleshooting while we were up there. No rest for the weary. Over the last 7 years, I've had the opportunity to return to South Dakota many times. And that's for a lot of reasons. One, Leader Thune has been on the Senate Commerce Committee overseeing the FCC, so I've gotten to come out here and testify for him. He's doing tremendous work representing the state. In fact, there's a lot of great state representatives, including some that are here today. They're doing phenomenal work right now. In fact, it was actually this monopole tower right here where I climbed with then, before even governor, then Congresswoman Noem, now Secretary Noem, on that practice tower right there. So South Dakota is definitely well represented. Now, I'll concede at the outset of these remarks here that Sioux Falls might not be everyone's pick to roll out a policy agenda for a regulatory agency based in Washington, D.C. I imagine that the other SF, San Francisco, might be a more natural pick for a lot of people for a tech or telecom agenda. But for my part, I can't think of a more appropriate place for me to announce this agenda, the agenda that will guide the FCC's upcoming work, than right here in the real SF. And that's because South Dakota shows what's possible when we get our regulatory policies right. I've seen it firsthand, just about 20 miles from here, Baltic, South Dakota. That's where I had the chance to hop on a connected tractor with Jeff, a third-generation farmer. He was using his high-speed connection to make precise inch-by-inch adjustments to the row crops, increasing yield and productivity. I've seen it about an hour further south in Yankton, South Dakota. That's where manufacturing plant was busy with workers there building the steel telecom towers and infrastructure that powers so many 5G services. I've seen it all the way on the other side of the state, in the Black Hills in Lead, South Dakota. That's where a mile underground, down a rickety old wooden elevator shaft, a new fiber connection was run, and now in that originally 1,800 gold mine tunnels, they're running a Nobel Prize-winning scientific research lab, thanks to a high-power connection. So I've seen it all across this state. And I've seen it in a lot of the visits across many communities in the country. But I've seen the challenges that remain as well. But obviously the real reason I chose South Dakota for announcing this speech is the tower workers here today and those standing behind me right now. America's telecom crews are simply the best of the best. They are salt of the earth people, and they always get the toughest jobs done. And I want to run a policy agenda back in Washington, D.C. that makes these guys and girls' jobs just a little bit easier. And speaking of D.C., I think it's safe to say that things are changing back there and fast. That's a good thing, and it's all thanks to President Trump. President Trump is taking quick action to turn things around in Washington. He's not playing it safe. He's not looking to make some changes around the edges. President Trump is taking decisive actions to usher in a new golden age in America. And I'd say that's precisely the type of change that we need to see in the telecom sector. Just look back at the last 4 years. The Biden administration's goal of connecting millions of Americans through a $42 billion infrastructure program went nowhere. It foundered on reams of regulatory red tape. Or take Spectrum, where the Biden administration fell into a deep malaise and we didn't make meaningful progress for years. But with all that in our rearview mirror, it's time to change things up. It's time to unleash new growth and opportunity. It's time to build. And I'm here today to do exactly that, to outline my vision for the FCC's Build America plan. As I'll outline today, our Build America agenda will focus on advancing a number of core policy areas. As we do so, we'll be guided by a few simple ideas. For one, we're going to keep the Gretzky test front and center in everything we do. We want to keep our eyes on the proverbial puck to where it is going, not where it's been. For another, we're going to take a first principles approach. Just because something has been on our books at the FCC for 30 years, we're not going to keep it there out of any sense of inertia. Build America isn't an agenda simply drawn from my years working at an agency inside the Beltway. It's an agenda inspired by the men and women that make up America's telecom workforce, people like Brandon, who've shown me firsthand what it takes to get the job done. So let's get into it. And for those that are really into this, there'll be even more detailed and lengthy version of this in my official written remarks that you can find online afterwards. First, the FCC on my watch will focus on unleashing high-speed infrastructure builds. That means modernizing the regulations that have been driving up costs and holding back internet builds. The good news is we know the playbook here that works. When I helped lead the FCC's efforts during the first Trump administration in 2018 to streamline small cell regulations, we saw record-breaking capital investment and network build-out, including right here in Sioux Falls. In fact, Sioux Falls was one of the very first cities in the country to go live with 5G, thanks to the permitting reforms that were put in place by my good friend Mayor Paul Tenhaken right here in Sioux Falls. So our Build America agenda will pick up where we left off. In fact, here's some news for you. I'm announcing today that the FCC will vote later this month to start a rulemaking that will accelerate the transition from aging copper line networks that too many communities are still on to modern high-speed ones. You see, back in D.C., we have rules on the books that have been forcing providers to continue to invest billions of dollars in those old networks, even when they want to shift those investments over to build new ones. So our goal here is pretty simple. We're aiming to free up billions of dollars for investment in new networks. But that's not all. I'll be asking my FCC colleagues to vote this month on an item that will revise the agency's pole attachment rules. For the uninitiated, the FCC's pole attachment rules govern the rules of the road for utility pole owners and broadband builders as they try to attach new high-speed connections to those lines. In fact, I saw firsthand some of the challenges there last night here in Sioux Falls when I joined Jordan and his crew as they were lashing new high-speed internet infrastructure onto utility poles, upgrading 30-year-old plant. Of course, the FCC's permitting reforms won't stop there. Our Build America agenda includes efforts to further streamline the many regulations that stand in the way of infrastructure projects. So under my leadership, the FCC will be taking a fresh look at how the agency can use our authorities under the Communications Act, including our authorities in Section 253 and 332, to make it easier to build out internet infrastructure. We're also going to look at NEPA and environmental regulations, which for too long have held back builds, and we have a unique window of opportunity right now, particularly in light of some new Supreme Court decisions, to cut some of the red tape there as well. Second, the FCC's Build America agenda is about more than just building high-speed lines. We also need to free up more spectrum, the invisible airways that power so much of our daily lives today. This is an important step because freeing up spectrum creates jobs. It increases competition. It drives down prices for consumers. It also keeps these tower climbers busy. After all, more spectrum means more building. That's why the FCC has prioritized taking actions on spectrum in the first few months of this administration. Kicking things off, we moved right away on a prime mid-band spectrum known as the upper C-band. We started looking at that. You may recall we took actions on a different portion of the C-band during the first Trump administration, and that helped free up a tremendous amount of spectrum. As a result, we're seeing new competition. In fact, there's a report just out from the Wall Street Journal that said that the price of home internet service fell by 3.1% in May from a year earlier. We're going to keep that trend going. So our agenda will prioritize freeing up spectrum and ensuring it's put to use. I'm pleased to announce here another new action today. Later this month, the Commission will vote on an order that will move us another step closer to auctioning spectrum licenses that we refer to as the AWS-3 spectrum band. That spectrum has been laying fallow for far too long, and it's time to put it to use. It has an additional benefit, too. The proceeds from that spectrum auction will use to replace insecure network gear like Huawei and ZTE by fully funding our Rip and Replace program. We'll keep making more progress on Spectrum, too, and much of that is thanks to President Trump. In his first term, he made clear we're going to lead the world in 5G. In this term, he says we want to continue to lead in 5G, 6G, and all new technologies, and it's going to take Spectrum to do that. We have an opportunity here with the One Big Beautiful bill as well, and thanks to Chairman Cruz in the Senate and Chairman Guthrie in the House, their portion of that legislation restores the FCC spectrum auction authority, including with a pipeline of new spectrum. So we're going to get moving on that. Buckle up. It's time to build there. Third, continuing to move vertically from the ground to the airwaves. Next up is space. The Build America agenda will expand America's space economy. The final frontier is home to an emerging constellation of satellites that have become an essential part of America's economic and geopolitical strategy. So I want to see U.S. companies dominate in orbit. As I detail in my written remarks, our efforts on this front will be driven by a few key guiding principles: speed, simplicity, security, and satellite spectrum abundance. And I'm pleased to report that we're making progress already at the agency across all those fronts, including clearing backlogs of applications for satellite systems. And this type of acceleration is certainly needed. In fact, if you look back over the past couple of years, it actually took a faster amount of time for America's innovators and entrepreneurs to build and launch satellite constellations than it would take for federal agencies in Washington to process the paperwork necessary to approve those launches. But that ends here. The Build America agenda will inject rocket fuel into our licensing process by standardizing our reviews through more objective metrics, protecting America's orbital advantage for years to come. Fourth, the Build America agenda will cut red tape, modernizing the FCC's operations as well. Outdated and unnecessary regulations from Washington can derail efforts to bring communities across the digital divide. We've seen that far too often. That's why our agenda includes a comprehensive initiative to eliminate unnecessary regulations. We're doing so in part through an FCC proceeding titled Delete, Delete, Delete. The idea is pretty simple. Oftentimes in engineering, and I think you can apply that to government, the most important improvement you can make to any part is to eliminate it altogether. We took one of our first actions under this initiative last week by limiting one set of regulations. And that one decision alone, that one action, the FCC removed about 77 rules from our books, 27 pages of regulations, and over 11,000 words. And here's another piece of new news on this front. I'm announcing this week that we are increasing the velocity of our delete proceeding with a vote at our July Commission meeting. That's when the Commission will vote on a streamlined process for removing regulations at scale and quickly. There's certainly a need for this. Think about it. The FCC, right now, still has rules on the books regulating telegraph service, rabbit ear, broadcast TV, receivers, and phone booths. Starting next month, that will change. In doing so, in eliminating those outdated rules, the FCC will move directly to delete 40 rules or requirements and over 7,000 words from the Code of Federal Regulations. A good step forward. Fifth, as we build, the FCC will ensure that our networks are secure and resilient too. Today, the U.S. faces a persistent threat from foreign adversaries, including the CCP. The CCP is always exploring and looking for ways to infiltrate America's communications networks and to sidetrack our global technology leadership. It's more important than ever that the FCC remain vigilant to keep America's networks secure. And our Build America agenda will do just that. Indeed, one of the very first actions that I took when I became chairman of the FCC was to establish a new council on national security within the agency. Our build agenda will ensure that the U.S. extends its lead over China in the race for critical technologies, whether it's 5G, 6G, or AI. And we're going to do so by making sure that U.S. businesses and the standards they set continue to be the gold standard for businesses all across the world. Sixth, finally, we cannot advance a Build America agenda without a strong U.S. workforce. And that brings me right back here to the tower and telecom workers that get the job done day in and day out. Our Build America agenda creates new opportunities to expand and strengthen our country's blue-collar workforce. After all, America's tower and telecom crews certainly work hard enough. They certainly put in enough hours on the road, often away from their families. I imagine there's a lot of folks out there that take our country's communications infrastructure for granted. They assume that it'll work when they turn on their phone or turn on their TV. In fact, if they think about it at all, perhaps they think that our networks run on magic or pixie dust. But it's thanks to you all. It's thanks to these workers here. None of this works without your skill and your dedication. So I think it's appropriate for you to realize the value of your work. And I'm pleased to see that we're already making progress on this front. Providers are now committing to a range of workforce reforms that will result in a more sustainable environment for America's tech and telecom crews. Carriers are putting new values on your work, ones that better reflect marketplace realities. Providers are changing their approach to certain 1099 crews, helping to ensure that experienced, well-trained crews get the jobs at fair prices. And these changes are also making it harder for foreign fly-by-night crews to sweep in and undercut the security and safety of our communications networks. These types of commitments are going to be a game changer for America's workers, and these reforms are part of a broader focus across the whole Trump administration. In fact, blue-collar workers have seen real wage growth of almost 2% in the first 5 months of President Trump's second term. And that's the largest increase for any administration in nearly 60 years. By looking out for the American worker, my expectation is that we will continue to see growth ahead. The Build America agenda will certainly help with that. But I'd like to close here with one last South Dakota story, because I think it illustrates the importance of why the Build America agenda needs to get done. It's the story of Misty and her husband, Brian. I met them in Midland, South Dakota, which is about, 250 miles or so west of here. For years, Misty worked for an IT company. But back then, her growing tech business meant hitting the road. Every week, Misty put another 1,000 miles on her car. Misty says she spent a lot of that dashboard time behind the wheel, and she taught herself Spanish while on the road all those many hours. After she got married, her husband, Brian, they moved back to the family's 7,000-acre farm outside Midland. Misty wanted to stay home and raise their young kids. She also wanted to maintain her high-tech career, which helped support the family. Working from home with a high-speed connection would let her do exactly that. But that was the problem. They only had dial-up. Misty gave it a shot. It didn't work. She would try to connect remotely to a client's site, and she'd lose the connection and the customer as well. That all changed back in 2017. That's when an internet provider extended a new high-speed connection to her home. When we visited at her farm, Misty told me that that change was night and day for her family. It let her maintain her high-tech business. The high-speed connection provided a big boost for their family's farming operation, too, by enabling precision ag for the first time. Misty and Brian show what hard work and an internet connection can mean for America's rural communities. They provide a helpful reminder that our work back in D.C. is important and what it can mean to families all across the country. Stories like theirs is why the FCC's Build agenda is so important. We want every single family and community in this country to benefit from a fair shot at next-generation connectivity. And I look forward to working hard at the FCC to deliver on that promise. So thank you again for joining me here. Thank you again to America's tower and telecom crews. I'm incredibly grateful for all your work that you get done. Thank you again for being here. Now let's get building.